Napster, a music sharing platform where you could listen to any song you wanted to for free. It was an overnight sensation that would bring the music industry to its knees.
Money, 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 money.
They understood the future of music, but couldn't figure out how to be a part of it. This is the incredible story that explains how one of history's biggest disruptors became disrupted themselves.
I am the greatest. I am the greatest. My power of iterating. Yeah. History I'm creating. History I'm creating. It's there for the taking. It's destiny in the making. It's destiny in the making.
When I was growing up, the way that you bought music was simply by going to a store and having to just buy the whole album.
These tapes where we would record music
and we'd bring them to school and we'd give them out. We'd make them really fun titles, we'd draw on them. It was like the early playlist.
People didn't want to consume an entire album by this artist who maybe had a couple of hits.
So you're essentially paying $20 to listen to a song.
And then as time went on, they had the birth of MP3 players.
Extinct.
If you win an MP3 player in the Tang Honeycomb MP3 giveaway. Ow!
This was the innovator that made you to be able to carry a couple hundred songs around in your pocket pretty easily.
The only problem was the music industry did not want this to happen.
I'm Joseph Menn. I wrote a book on Napster called All the Rave, The Rise and Fall of Sean Fanning's Napster. One of the truths of the technology industry is that tech moves much faster than the law. The record industry was digging in its heels at everything. They hated stuff that changed their model because their model was terrific for them.
So they actually took the first MP3 player to court and called it an illegal recording device to try to stop this magic of song sharing, playlists, and accessible music.
Business model built on infringement is not only morally wrong, but legally wrong.
But the copyright law says if there was a legitimate other purpose that people were using it for, then you couldn't kill a new technology.
So these old industries are looking at, wait, how do we get paid on that?
Music files were beginning to be shared at an exponential rate.
But it was the innovation of two teenagers that would alter the course of how we would consume music forever.
Sean Fanning and Sean Parker have an amazing idea.
To be able to share music online and pass MP3s back and forth instead of having to burn mixtapes and physically hand somebody a CD.
When you have people that are innovators, they'll find even better and faster ways of sharing.
You hear talk of the celestial jukebox, or a big archive of all the music in the world, and you can listen to whatever you want, as whenever you want.
Sean Fanning was a hacker. He wrote programs for port scanning, finding ways to tap into other people's computers. And Sean Parker was much more of an entrepreneurial, businessy sort.
I think it might not be legal.
And so when Sean Fanning told Sean Parker, hey, I'm working on this cool program for music sharing, Parker got really excited, and he tried to think of ways to make money and sketch out a business model for how they could make it big.
We felt like internet offered an enormous opportunity to change distribution of music and get more music out to more people in the world.
My name is Wayne Chang, and I ran an online community at Napster. We were teenagers. I was 14, 15. It was the wild, wild west of the internet back then, exploring different types of ways to build hacking tools.
Frustrated with unreliable searches for MP3 files of music, Fanning had created a peer-to-peer database that would allow users to search and find song files from other users.
He called it Napster.
I remember when Napster came out and how innovative it was. It was a really, really exciting time because you could search for any song.
It just gave everybody all the music they could ever want for free.
And it instantly became tradable and instantly became an online currency. Do you have this? Do you have that?
For this CD, I'd like to start off with Liz, Polyester Bride.
Sure, for you.
Once they had that, they did not want to go back to tromping to the record store and plunking down $20 for a CD.
It changed the way that you procured MP3s.
And the more people that joined it, the more powerful Napster was.
It was fascinating to see from 0 to 1 how fast Napster developed itself.
This system, what's most interesting about it is you're interacting with peers. You're exchanging information with, the person down the street.
Napster was real technology, so that made it easy for the venture capitalists to want to get in on it. And they got some early investment from a venture firm called Draper Atlantic. And then the next big move was to Silicon Valley.
No sleep till daylight, homie. I'ma shine bright like daylight on me.
By September of 1999, with the phenomenon of Napster users growing,
venture capitalists were eager to get in on the ground floor. They get an opportunity to get an investment of $15 million, and they've got to figure out how to do this legally.
The legal situation was tough. Even though they did this really clever peer-to-peer distribution, Napster, the company, knows what songs are being downloaded.
For Napster, they weren't technically storing any of the music. They were just providing the place where people could connect peer-to-peer and share the music with each other.
There's a lot of ideological battles on so many different fronts.
It was, according to the record industry, the largest theft of intellectual property in history.
The creators of copyright will not get compensated, and the movies and music will not get made. It's as simple as that.
You have different sides. The artists themselves were pro-Napster or pro-label.
Lars Ulrich, the drummer, was pretty outspoken that Napster was taking money out of their pockets.
Part of what we're trying to do here is make people understand that what they're doing is illegal.
There were some, like Chuck D of the band Public Enemy, that were also in favor of Napster.
I look at Napster as a connection between file sharing, which this is, and downloadable distribution. That's power going back to the people.
And the argument that it's good marketing actually proved itself with Radiohead.
Radiohead has 1.2 million downloads of their new album.
And they became #1 on the charts, which they had never done before.
So it was really giving an audience to some of the bands that hadn't had that kind of traction before.
The record industry actually had a terrible track record of paying the artists. People who actually thought about these things thought, I can't think of an industry I'd rather rip off.
By October of 2000, Napster was nearing almost 80 million users.
Sean Fanning's simple peer-to-peer file sharing program had become a household name.
Napster users had downloaded an estimated 250 million songs over the weekend.
The public relations people are going full bore because there's, every newspaper in the world is calling.
And then very quickly, as the media caught on to it, then it became really recognizable as a brand.
When the press started calling, they would put Sean Fanning forward.
Today at BYU, he was treated like a rock star.
Sean Fanning ends up on the cover of Time magazine as the face of digital music.
It's strange, it's awkward. I'm not used to this.
There weren't any really cool hackers. There's like Kevin Mitnick, who's a criminal, and there's Bill Gates, who had a lot of money. And Sean Fanning was like the first hacker with mass appeal.
He's an awesome guy, and he's so young, too.
Consumers love them. Now major artists are getting behind them and supporting the brand.
So on one hand, Napster is killing it. The youngest generation of music consumers love Napster. But on the other hand,
the record industry was going to try and shut it down.
Every time a Napster enthusiast downloads a song, it takes money from the pockets of all these members of the creative community.
In the year of 2000, Napster was finding themselves at the height of popularity and suddenly thrust in the media spotlight.
At this point, Napster's going through a lot of different things. They have the music industry suing them. They're growing like crazy. They're getting national attention.
In fact, the RIAA had estimated that Napster had caused the music industry
more than $300 million in lost sales.
Business plan was to get as much money as they could from the record industry by knowing more about their customers in terms of music, by being bigger than any of the labels as a channel of distribution, and forcing the record industry to buy them off to stop the piracy.
I just let that money talk.
That business plan was extortion.
The music industry is very powerful.
They didn't call it sharing. We called it sharing. They called it theft, right? They called it stealing.
Representatives for the world's top recording companies are taking the company to court, trying to shut it down.
Napster is afraid they're going to get sued out of business.
The old way of business, again, is crush and kill. And how do we do that? Through the court, right? Through litigation.
Not wanting to be caught in the crossfire of major lawsuits, many universities and colleges banned the use of Napster on its campuses.
It's not really necessarily Napster itself, it's the software and the ideals behind the program.
People started to side with Napster. People wanted to see Napster win. They wanted to see him succeed because they liked the product better.
If they shut down Napster today in the United States, it pops up in a different country, totally outside their control.
I don't blame a 17-year-old for not knowing copyright law. Sean Fanning, he wanted to share music, and he was a really good programmer, and Sean Parker was this, ambitious entrepreneurial sort who, he had dollar signs in his eyes, but, that's how stuff gets out into the world.
I remember looking at the music industry and just thinking, oh, why would you do this? You're already rich enough. Let us just have our music.
But the court case is anything but clear-cut. Napster exists in a legal gray area.
It wasn't long before the artists themselves began to take legal action against Napster.
Getting the infringing material off of Napster and keeping the other stuff would be like trying to take the pee out of a swimming pool.
The way that Napster did it was very rudimentary. There was no fingerprinting of the audio. It was just on file name. And so if Green Day says, hey, I don't want Green Day to show up whatsoever, they would just ban that result from appearing. And that's how they first tried to approach it.
The debate will now play out in the California courts, where Napster is being sued by the recording industry and Metallica.
They printed out the names of all the people they wanted banned, and they carted it to the San Mateo office.
And it was a spectacle. That this was about the least rock and roll thing you could possibly do.
Even though Napster was winning over the hearts and minds of music lovers, they had decided to settle the lawsuit with Metallica and kick off over 300,000 users who were accused of sharing copyrighted music.
That took some determination.
The harsh legal realities meant the party was over for Napster.
Sean Parker had left the company, and many of the original programmers had moved on. But Napster was still very popular with users, peaking with over 26 million.
Napster's service was so good and so popular that logically there should be a way to monetize it and get money where it needed to go.
They're having a really hard time getting investment. It's really too scary and too risky to want to take them on as a liability.
And now you're being looked at like, I don't know, is this company even going to be there? With Napster bleeding cash due to its lawsuits with the record companies, they had finally found a company that would be willing to make a sizable investment.
The firm Hummer Winblad was the first major venture capital firm that came in. Hank Barry, who was a Hummer Winblad partner, took over as CEO.
CD sales are up 8%, over $1 billion, Senator.
Hank Barry knew the old ways of buying music on CD were over,
and that digital music files is what music lovers preferred. Napster had all these users. What they needed were allies in the music industry.
They did attract the attention of Thomas Mittelhoff, who was the young CEO of a German media conglomerate called Bertelsmann.
Bertelsmann was a German media company that owned the record label BMG.
They realized that this is the future. The way that we're trying to sue them and stop them isn't going to work long term. BMG ends up giving them another $50 million of investment, and Napster now has a new plan.
What if we could come up with a space in the middle where we could charge a nominal fee for people to be able to still access and share this music?
They offer the music industry $1 billion up front to drop the lawsuit.
And we believe in it so much that we're going to end up giving you some kind of revenue share along the way after that.
It was very innovative in the fact that they saw that this is where consumers wanted to go. Everything needed to be more toteable, shareable, discoverable. Who wouldn't do that?
As 4 out of the 5 biggest record labels sued Napster in the hopes of shutting them down, BMG, the 5th label and Napster's partner, had one more Hail Mary pass at making a deal.
With CEO Thomas Mittelhoff putting $1 billion on the table.
Whether the recording industry accepts Napster's $1 billion offer remains to be seen.
They didn't just come to the industry and say, hey, here's an idea, but they gave them an amazing offer.
We're gonna bring you in on this. There's gonna be revenue share. Here's $1 billion. We wanna partner in this endeavor. If you just stop the lawsuits.
But it's falling on deaf ears.
The industry has yet to accept.
The music industry ends up declining the offer of $1 billion and decides to continue with the lawsuits.
The judge said that they needed to be 100% compliant. They were allowed to operate if it was just uncopyrighted material.
What is it capable of being used for? Because otherwise you're going to deprive the public.
But the record industry was all over them, and they found some copyrighted material still getting distributed, and the judge shut them down.
It's time for Napster to stand down and build their business the old-fashioned way.
In June 2002, Napster filed for bankruptcy.
There's a bankruptcy court auction of the brands. You could get some sweet Napster merch, or you could buy the brand. That's really what was left, was the technology and the brand. Bertelsmann wanted to wind up with the Napster brand and the technology, but they didn't want to have control while Napster was still on the hook for potentially billions of dollars in damages. So their answer was to encourage a bankruptcy filing. The problem with that was that the other record labels opposed it. They argued bankruptcy filing was fraud because Bertelsmann had already been pulling the strings. Bertelsmann wasn't able to buy Napster out of bankruptcy, and so Roxio bought the name.
Roxio, an MP3 player, resurrects them, buys them, and brings them back, and they launch their own music subscription service.
Napster 2.0, a subscription-based company where you could now get unlimited amounts of music.
Which now makes everything they're doing legal. It seems like this partnership is gonna be a saving grace into the future of Napster and music. But then Steve Jobs comes along and he realizes that MP3s are here to stay. This is how people want to consume music now.
We all know that starting in 1999, there was this phenomenon called Napster.
What he saw was the idea of the MP3.
It demonstrated that the internet was made for music delivery.
And so he releases the iPod.
He creates the most beautiful device ever.
I'm gonna hunt you down. This was the perfect embodiment of that ability to listen to music anytime you want.
iPod. This Apple iPod does not let you use Napster. I don't know what the Napster founders were thinking at the time, but I'm sure they had a proverbial heart attack.
The iPod only worked with Apple. Steve Jobs comes out with this little thing called the iTunes Store.
Music downloads done right.
We could then go and purchase not just albums, but singles.
Steve Jobs had been trying for years to get a deal that would allow him to sell singles for 99 cents.
So what did he do? He created the iPod first. He made us fall in love with this slender device, and then he gave us a way of purchasing more music.
So now the music industry is forced to look at this whole big picture again and say, maybe we were wrong about consumer behavior here.
We are at the beautiful Desert Ridge Mall in Phoenix, and it's with sadness that we note that Tower Records is going out of business.
Napster 2.0, they're like, we're still in the game. We're like the cockroach that just won't die.
Well, Victoria, now that Napster is talking seriously about charging users, many of the fans are starting to come around.
And as they're finally trying to get their bearings, they get attacked from another side, from this company called Pandora.
And they're not making people pay for the streaming.
Pandora allowed people to get music for free by listening to ads. You couldn't curate your own playlist. You had to put on a station and just let it do its thing. So it was a different listening experience. Pandora makes an app on their iPhone as well, but Napster does not create an app. So Napster loses out on this market.
And they fail once again.
Now in 2011, Napster finally makes the decision to get an app on the iPhone. And at this point in time, they're a smaller subscription-based business that is probably pretty happy that they're doing it. The only problem is there's this new massive company in Europe that is taking everything by storm, and they're about to come to America and do the same thing. That company was called Spotify.
And the man Spotify turned to guide them was none other than Sean Parker.
Spotify was looking to expand to North America, and the person they picked to lead them was Sean Parker.
Now you have Spotify, and you've said that it is your life's mission to complete what you didn't complete with Napster.
Sean Parker always believed in his innovative idea for a subscription-based service for music sharing.
Spotify goes hard and heavy from the beginning. They're not wasting time. They just get it from day one. They understand the trial. They understand about gaining momentum in the beginning.
So everybody starts moving away from iTunes and back to the free space where they can now discover music again and make their own playlists.
The brand has been bought, sold, come to mean completely different things.
So Best Buy ends up buying Napster.
What is this? I guess this is like a poor man's version of an iPod?
Best Buy's curiosity with Napster ends after 3 years. They were then acquired by Rhapsody.
In just a few years, a lot had changed about the record industry.
Spotify has just dominated not only the United States market, but the European market. They have 500 million users.
People wanted a library and an archive of all the music ever.
Steve Jobs thought that people wanted to own their music.
This was one of the only times that Steve Jobs wasn't right about something he had an idea about.
It wasn't until later that people got used to the idea of streaming music instead, especially with services like Spotify.
That can trace its roots back to Napster.
Sean Parker, by investing into Spotify, he gave a rebirth to what he initially started with Napster.
And it's got to be pretty devastating for Napster because they were the ones who pioneered the model, yet they weren't the ones who were rewarded for it.
Instead, they were vilified and sued into bankruptcy.
Napster got it right as far as what consumers wanted. Just couldn't figure out soon enough how to financially benefit from that model.
So at the end of the day, Napster did lose, but the music industry also lost.
Revenues have been decreasing year over year.
And so what Napster successfully did was they shook the tree.
The real winners were us as the music lovers.
They allowed us to open up and gain more access. They put the power back into the people.
The fact that we expect to get the same content whenever we want it, all that's because of Napster.
It really shows the power of the internet, and really just a few talented young kids could really change the world.
I'm the GOAT.